The first message Emily ever got from him was, "You look just like your photos. I was worried you wouldn't." Which would be a normal thing to say, except they hadn't met yet. They were supposed to meet in an hour. She was still at home, still deciding what to wear, and she had never sent him a photo of what she looked like today. She wrote back, "How do you know what I look like right now?" The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. And then he wrote, "Lucky guess. See you soon. Stay with me. Emily's night is coming. But first, get comfortable, pull the blanket up, and let the rain do its work. You're listening to true horror stories for sleep. Tonight, 12 stories from the strange new world of meeting strangers. First dates, dating apps, messages from people who turned out to be someone else, entirely. All of them real. All told, slowly and quietly, so you can drift off whenever your body's ready. If these stories keep you company through the sleepless hours, subscribe so you never lose us. Leave a like so more of the sleepless find their way here. And tell us in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Now, lights off. Story 1. Story 1. The restaurant he chose. This comes from a woman named Rachel, and it happened in 2018 in Chicago. Rachel had been talking to a man on a dating app for about 2 weeks. He was easy to talk to, funny, attentive, quick to reply. When it came time to meet, he suggested a specific restaurant, a small Italian place in a neighborhood, a little outside the center. Rachel didn't know it, but the reviews were good, so she agreed. Here's the one smart thing Rachel did, the thing she wants everyone listening to do. She told her sister exactly where she was going, who she was meeting, and when to expect a check-in text. She screenshotted his profile and sent it over. Standard safety, the kind everyone means to do, and half of us skip. The date itself was fine. Better than fine. He was charming in person, the food was good, and 2 hours went by easily. He paid. He walked her to her car, a polite distance away, said goodnight, didn't push to extend the evening. Rachel drove home, thinking she'd finally had a normal one. Her sister's check-in text came while she was driving. "How's it going?" Rachel pulled over to answer. "Really well, actually. He's nice." And her sister wrote back something that made Rachel sit very still in the dark car. "Wait, that restaurant isn't the one in his profile area. That's like 40 minutes from where he said he lives. Why'd he pick somewhere so far from both of you?" Rachel hadn't thought about it, but now she did. The restaurant was far from his neighborhood and far from hers. It was, in fact, not convenient to anyone. Why would a man pick a first date spot that was a long drive for both of them? She got curious and a little uneasy, and she did what we all do now. She searched the restaurant's exact address, along with his first name, on the off chance. Nothing came up. So she searched the address on its own, with the word police. The restaurant sat 2 blocks from an apartment complex where, 8 months earlier, a woman had reported that a man she'd met on a dating app had followed her home after a first date and sat outside her building for 3 nights. The man was never identified. The description was vague. But one detail in the old news write-up matched. The woman had also said her date chose a restaurant strangely far from anywhere, one she didn't know, in a neighborhood she'd never have picked herself. Rachel can't prove it was the same man. That's the honest truth of this story. She never will. But she noticed something in hindsight that stayed with her. All evening, he had asked about where she lived. Not aggressively, woven in. Which neighborhood? Was it a house or an apartment? Did she have roommates? Was the parking on the street? The kinds of questions that sound like getting to know you, and are also, if you lay them end to end, a map. She never replied to his next message. She blocked him, and for 2 weeks, she asked her sister to text her every night when she got home. Nobody ever sat outside her building. But Rachel says she thinks about the restaurant, the wrongness of the location, the one clue that something was being planned that had nothing to do with dinner. She says now she always asks herself one question about a first date spot. Convenient for whom? Take a breath. Let that settle. Into the rain. Story 2. Story 2. The second phone. This one comes from a man named David, and it happened in 2015, in Phoenix. David was in his early 30s, and had been messaging a woman for about a month before they met. Long conversations, late into the night. The kind that make you feel like you already know someone. She was warm and a little mysterious, slow to share details about her life, which David found intriguing rather than concerning. They finally met for coffee. She was exactly as advertised. Lovely, easy, real. But about 20 minutes in, her phone, face down on the table, lit up and buzzed. She flipped it over fast, silenced it, apologized. A minute later, it buzzed again. And this time, David, not meaning to, saw the screen. The name on the incoming call was Home. And below it, a photo. The contact photo was a picture of a man. A specific man, mid-40s, standing in a kitchen, smiling at the camera the way you smile at someone you live with. She saw him see it. And here's where the coffee date turned into something David still can't fully explain. She didn't get flustered. She got still. She looked at him for a moment, calculating, and then she said lightly, "That's my brother. We live together." Which might have been true. Except a few minutes later, she went to the restroom, and she left that phone on the table, face up, and it buzzed again. A text this time, the preview visible on the lock screen, from Home. And the text said, "Did you find out where he lives yet?" David read it upside down across the table, and he says the coffee shop seemed to go very quiet around him. He did not wait for her to come back. He left money on the table, walked out, got in his car, and drove. Not home, deliberately not home, but to a busy grocery store parking lot where he sat for 20 minutes watching his mirrors. Nobody followed. When he got home much later, by a winding route, everything was normal. But David had matched with this woman on a dating app, and he'd told her, over that month of easy conversation, a lot. Where he worked, the general area he lived, that he lived alone, that he'd just bought his place. That first, warm, flattering month of getting to know someone. He'd handed over a full profile of an isolated man with a new house, and no one to notice if something happened. He deleted the app that night. He reported the account, though it had already vanished by morning. He never learned who Home was, or what the two of them were doing, or whether he'd been the only one, or one of many. He changed nothing about his house. He told himself he was being paranoid. And then, 2 weeks later, he changed his locks anyway, because he couldn't sleep otherwise. David says the lesson he took wasn't about that woman. It was about the month before her. About how much he'd given away while he thought he was falling for someone, and how a stranger with a warm voice and good timing can learn everything about your life, while you believe you're the one doing the choosing. Let the rain wash that one away. Story 3. Story 3. She was already inside. This story comes from a woman named Nadia, and it happened in 2020, during the strange, isolated months of that year, in Toronto. Nadia had been talking to someone for a while, but not romantically, or not only romantically. She'd met a woman in an online group, a local community for people new to the city, and they'd hit it off. Same age, same neighborhood, both a little lonely, in a year that made everyone lonely. They messaged constantly. The woman, who went by Kate, was the closest thing Nadia had to a friend in a new city. After a couple of months, they finally arranged to meet in person, at Nadia's apartment, for a wine night. 2 friends, a bottle, a break from the loneliness. Nadia was genuinely excited. Kate arrived on time, warm and funny in person, exactly like her messages. The evening was lovely, and at some point, comfortable and a little tipsy. Nadia went to the kitchen to open the second bottle, and while she was rummaging in the drawer for the corkscrew, Kate called out from the living room, "Oh, is your bathroom still the second door on the left?" Nadia laughed and said yes, and then stopped, corkscrew in hand, because Kate had never been to her apartment before. This was the first time. There was no still. There was no way for Kate to know the layout of an apartment she had, by every account, never entered. Nadia stood in the kitchen and tried to make it make sense. Maybe Kate had seen it in a photo. Nadia scrolled her own messages in her head. Had she ever sent a picture that showed the hallway? She didn't think so. Maybe it was a lucky guess. Lots of apartments have the bathroom down a hall. She talked herself most of the way to calm, and then Kate, still in the living room, added, "I always thought the light in here was nice in the evenings." The light in the evenings. Something you would only know if you had been in that apartment, in the evening, before. Nadia is not sure to this day exactly what she was dealing with. The most likely explanation, the one the police leaned toward, was almost as unsettling as the alternatives. Kate had lived in that building before, possibly in that exact unit, or one identical to it in the same line of the building. She had, it seemed, sought out Nadia specifically, in the local group, after recognizing the address Nadia once mentioned. Kate had a history with that apartment that she had never disclosed across 2 months of daily friendship. An old tenancy, an eviction, something the building's management was cagey about when police asked. Nadia ended the night early, politely, pleading a headache. She never had Kate over again, and when she gently pulled back, Kate's messages turned first hurt, then cold, then frightening. Long paragraphs about how Nadia didn't understand, how that apartment was supposed to be hers, how she'd only wanted to see it one more time. Nadia moved when her lease was up. She says the hardest part wasn't the fear, it was the grief. For 2 lonely months, she thought she'd made a friend, and the whole friendship had been built on top of a room she was sleeping in without knowing its history. Check that the door's locked if you need to. I'll wait. The rain isn't going anywhere. If you're still awake and want more nights like this, now's a good time. Subscribe, leave a like, and tell us in the comments about the moment something felt off. If you're drifting, ignore all of that. Sleep is the whole point. Story 4. Story 4. The Friend Who Came Along. This one comes from a woman named Simone, and it happened in 2013, in Atlanta. Simone was meeting a man from a dating site for the first time. Dinner, a restaurant she chose, in daylight. All the right precautions. She'd told 2 friends. She felt good about it. He showed up with another man. Not at the table. The friend hung back, a few tables over, alone, nursing a drink. But Simone recognized him from the parking lot. They'd arrived in the same car. Her date never mentioned him, never acknowledged him, and the friend never looked over. But he was there for the entire dinner, sitting alone, not on his phone, not reading, just present. Simone is the kind of person who says what she notices. About 40 minutes in, she said plainly, "Is that your friend over there? The guy you drove here with?" Her date's face did something complicated, and then he told her the truth, which was stranger than a lie would have been. He said, "He's a safety thing. I have him come to my first dates. In case." "In case of what?" Simone asked. In case you weren't who you said. In case it was a setup. He watches, and if anything's wrong, he steps in. Now, you could almost hear this as reasonable. People do get catfished into dangerous situations. Men are targeted for robbery this way too. But Simone sat with it, and the wrongness bloomed slowly. Because if the friend was only there to observe in case of danger, why had her date hidden him? Why not say up front, "I bring a friend to first dates. I hope that's okay." Why let her sit through most of a dinner being watched by a man she hadn't agreed to be watched by? And there was the other thing. The friend's chair faced Simone. Not the door, not the room. Her. For 40 minutes, a stranger had been positioned to watch her. And only her. While her date asked her the ordinary questions of a first date. Where do you live? Do you live alone? How'd you get here tonight? Where are you parked? Simone did something she's proud of. She excused herself to the restroom, and instead she went to the hostess stand, quietly explained the situation, and asked the staff to walk her out to the back to her car and watch until she drove away. They did. She never saw whether the two men followed. She'd parked with the nose of her car facing out. An old habit. And she was gone in seconds. Her date texted, baffled and wounded, that she'd overreacted, that the friend was just a precaution, that she'd embarrassed him. The messages had the exact tone of a man who genuinely believed he'd done nothing wrong, which Simone found more disturbing than anger would have been. She never found out what the two of them were actually doing. Maybe it really was just a strange, badly explained safety habit. Maybe it was something else, rehearsed and practiced, a two-man routine, run on woman after woman. Simone will never know, and that not knowing is the whole shape of the story. She says she has one rule now, above all the others. She meets people alone, and if they don't come alone, the date is already over. Breathe. Rain. Story 5. Story 5. The messages that knew too much. This story comes from a man named Kevin, and it happened in 2017, in a mid-sized city in Ohio. Kevin had been messaging a woman on an app for a couple of weeks. Things were going well, in that pleasant, low-stakes way. And then the messages started to change. Subtly. In a way he couldn't put his finger on at first. She started referencing things he hadn't told her. Small things. She mentioned, offhand, that he must be tired after his long day. On a day he had worked a double he'd never mentioned. She said she hoped his car was running better. He'd had car trouble that week, and he was certain he hadn't brought it up with her. She wished him luck at his brother's thing that weekend. He didn't remember telling her his brother existed. Individually, each one had an explanation. Maybe he'd mentioned the double and forgotten. Maybe the car came up. Our memories of long chat threads are unreliable. Kevin scrolled back through the whole conversation, looking for where he'd said these things, and he couldn't find any of them. The explanation, when it came, was almost mundane, and worse for it. Kevin's social media was not as private as he thought. His accounts were open. He posted more than he realized. A tired face selfie after the double. A frustrated post about the car. A comment on his brother's photo about the upcoming thing. She wasn't a psychic. She was a reader. She was consuming his entire public life in parallel with their conversation, and then feeding it back to him as intimacy, as uncanny closeness, as a connection that felt deeper than it should, this early. That alone would just be a lesson about privacy settings. But here's what made it a horror story. When Kevin, unsettled, started pulling back and asking how she knew these things, she didn't retreat. She escalated. The next message referenced his address. Not the street, but the color of his front door, and the fact that his porch light was out. Things you could only know by standing in front of his house. She had found him. From an open profile, and a couple of weeks of chat, and the small, careless breadcrumbs everyone drops, she had assembled enough to locate the actual house of a man she had never met in person, and she wanted him to know she was there. Kevin called the police. Because she'd never threatened him in explicit words, and because online everything is deniable, there wasn't much they could formally do. But an officer did make contact with the account holder, and whatever was said, the messages stopped cold. The profile disappeared. His porch light being out was never mentioned by anyone again. Kevin locked down every account he had that same night. He says he'd always thought of his social media as harmless, a scattering of small, ordinary posts that added up to nothing. He learned that they added up to a map, a schedule, and a mood. Everything a stranger would need to arrive at your door, already knowing you. He says he posts almost nothing now, and when he does, he waits until whatever it was is over. Story 6 is waiting. And it's a quieter one, for the part of the night where you're mostly gone. Story 6. She looked just like her photos now. Finally, back to Emily. The woman from the very start of tonight. The one who got the message before they'd met. You look just like your photos. I was worried you wouldn't. This was 2019, in Seattle. Emily had been talking to him for about 10 days. Normal, pleasant, unremarkable. They'd agreed to meet for a drink. And an hour before the date, that message arrived. You look just like your photos right now. About a woman he had not yet seen in person, on a day she had sent him no picture. When she asked how he could possibly know, he wrote, "Lucky guess," and "See you soon." Emily is a careful person, and that message set off every alarm she had. She almost cancelled, but she talked herself into a middle path. She would still go, because it was a busy public bar she knew well, but she would go early, get there before him, and choose her own seat where she could see the door. She arrived 40 minutes early. She took a stool at the bar, with a clear view of the entrance, ordered a soda, and watched. And about 10 minutes before their agreed time, she watched him walk in. She recognized him from his photos. And she watched what he did before he knew she was there. He didn't scan the room for his date. He walked straight to a table in the back corner, a table with a clear sightline to the front window, and he sat down facing the glass. And Emily understood, with a lurch, what the message had meant. He'd seen her that morning, not in the bar, outside her home, or on her commute, or somewhere in her ordinary day. He had been watching her before the date, which meant he already knew where she lived or worked, which meant the 10 days of pleasant chat had been happening alongside something else entirely. Emily did not approach him. She sat at the bar, a stranger among strangers, and she texted a friend, and she asked the bartender, quietly, the way Simone had, the way you hope you'd have the sense to let her slip out the side and to please not point her out if a man in the back corner asked about a woman matching her description. She left. He was still facing the window, watching the front door for a woman who was already gone. He texted later, "Did you not show? I was worried." And then, an hour after that, "I saw you leave. That wasn't nice." Which confirmed the whole thing. He had seen her leave a bar he thought she'd never entered, because he'd been watching the wrong door while she watched him. Emily reported the account and, at the officer's suggestion, filed a report documenting everything, in case it was ever needed. She changed her routine for a month. Different route to work, different gym hours, a friend walking her to her car. Nothing else happened. The messages, once blocked, had nowhere to go. But Emily kept one habit from that night, the habit that may have been the whole difference. She arrives early. She picks the seat. She watches the door. She says the safest thing she ever did was refuse to be the one who was found, and choose instead to be the one already watching when he walked in. That's the first 6. If you're still with me, Stay. The stories keep going. Slower now. Softer. For as long as you need them. If you're at the edge of sleep, let go. That's what this is for. And whenever you surface, tonight or tomorrow, subscribe. If these stories kept you company, leave a like so more of the sleepless find their way here. And tell us in the comments, what's the moment on a first date or a first meeting that told you to trust your gut? Sleep well. Lock your doors. The rain will still be here.